Welcome to AI Decoded, the show where we take a deep dive into the world of artificial intelligence. Well, as AI continues to advance at breakneck speed, the big question on many people's minds is, will AI take my job and will it make my previously employable skills obsolete? Well, the FT says the great AI jobs disruption is now underway. Many companies are deep into the experimentation phase of adopting AI in their businesses, with cost and time-saving applications of the technology proving very popular. Axios carries a warning from Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic, that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and spike unemployment to 10 to 20% in the next 1 to 5 years. He says AI companies and governments need to stop sugarcoating the upheaval that's coming. Fortune magazine singles out recent graduates who say AI is increasingly threatening the types of jobs that historically have served as stepping stones for young workers who are just beginning their careers. Meanwhile, The Economist argues AI's impact on jobs could be overblown. The article says less than 10% of US firms use AI to produce goods and services, and when companies do adopt AI, they don't let people go. AI says it may simply help a worker do their job faster rather than making them redundant. Finally, AI is likely to increase the gender gap in employment, according to a report by the United Nations International Labour Organization. The report looked at the automation risk facing different jobs thanks to AI and found that in high-income countries like the US, women are at risk due to the high automation potential of their jobs. Well, with me in the studio to discuss all this, Arda Kaya, who is Associate Director at EY Parthenon, where he focuses on AI integration and workforce transformation. We're also joined down the line by Parmi Olsen, who's a technology columnist at Bloomberg and author on AI. And as always, we have our regular AI Decoded contributor and expert, Stephanie Hare. Thank you all so much for being with us. It's great to see you. Let us kick off. Stephanie, let me start with you with the FT report saying that there is a lot of AI disruption of jobs. And that is the thing that so many of us worry about, frankly.
Well, what's hilarious is there's so many studies that have just come out saying that CEOs are investing in AI pilots kind of out of a fear of missing out, FOMO, but they don't actually understand the technology and they don't know what the return on investment is. So we're seeing a lot of noise out in the market. We are not seeing any indication yet of productivity gains for most sectors. There's a few, and we're going to talk about them on this show. But for a lot of people, this is a lot of heat, not necessarily a lot of light.
Parmi, you cover obviously a lot of the financial sector. Would you agree with that? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think it's also difficult to measure the return on investment for AI. If you're measuring how well your coders are using it, you have to get them to manually write down how much time they're saving from using, for example, a coding tool. And also, I think just to kind of complicate matters a little bit, there have also been yet another study showing that something like 40% of professional workers are using ChatGPT and other generative AI tools at work, but a third of them are doing so secretly. So not only is it hard to measure how impactful it is also hard to tell if people are using it at all and how much they're using it.
Arda Kaya, let me bring in you here. I mean, the question of how much disruption there is going to be is still very unknown, isn't it?
That's absolutely correct. So when we talk to the industry, board discussions primarily leaning on having an AI implementation, AI offering, but we don't know what is the return of investment on the long run. There is a huge uncertainty growing right now on this space. So I think these layoffs are a part of its negative impact of this current AI advancements.
Well, let us hold that thought, because I just want to bring in the Axios report, which did carry this warning. It got a lot of attention this week from the CEO of Anthropic, Dario Amodei, saying AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and push unemployment to 10 to 20% within 1 to 5 years. Do you think that is a realistic proposition? Because you are involved, Arda, in workplace transformation itself. You're actually helping companies to do this. Do you think that is a realistic proposition?
I do agree. and also not agree. Let me explain. I do agree just because the technology reached a level of maturity right now so that it can happen anytime. So we have the infrastructure, we have the large language models in place, and it is only changing the way of working. I do not agree with this bold statement just because it will not happen overnight. So it will take time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will not happen anytime soon. For example, we are expecting to see more layoffs touching these industries, different perspectives in the 3 to 5 years time. So we're going to discuss and talk more and more about this.
Stephanie, do you agree that this prediction of half of all entry-level white-collar jobs is likely? Because in previous transformations, we've talked more about blue-collar jobs being at risk, and this is very, very different.
I think it's going to maybe make us redefine what we mean by white-collar jobs, right? So before, we used to have pools of typists, right, in offices. You don't see that so much anymore. That was like an absolute staple in an office not even that long ago. And now it would be ridiculous to do that. You got a whole suite of office tools like Microsoft Office's suite that everybody uses in the corporate world and education. We haven't really had a major innovation since then until now with generative AI. So this is kind of something that you'd be expecting to see now. That didn't wipe out loads of jobs. What it did is it changed jobs. People moved into new jobs and we created new value. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of things that people are doing now that are probably what they would describe as things that could be automated and maybe are low value in the sense that once you get rid of them, and we all know what those tasks are in our lives that we'd love to automate, then we can go on and do higher value work. That's the positive
But
view.
that means that the workforce has to upskill.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well,
but that's always been true.
Yes. As you know, Stephanie and Parmi, just to bring you into, we met last week actually, because I have just signed up for a master's in AI ethics to try and bring myself on this journey too.
Good luck with it.
Quite daunting. I don't know if it's going to do the trick for me, but it's a fascinating and ever-changing area. What are you seeing in the financial world? Because it was really interesting, for example, to read about UBS rolling out sort of images, deepfakes, as you can call them, of their own analysts to interact with clients, so that they could read out their reports. And if some of their clients, for example, wanted to see them or hear them rather than just read them, that was one sort of use of AI that wouldn't replace those analysts, but would just add an extra service. What are you seeing in the financial sector?
Well, first of all, I would just say that going back to Dario Amadei's comments, I absolutely agree with his point that the real disruption to jobs is going to affect university graduates. They are the cohort that is most vulnerable to disruption by AI. And when you think about it, and this is true in the financial sector, in legal firms, in media firms, and it comes down to this, which is that when companies are using generative AI, they're advised to treat these AI tools like an intern or like a research assistant. You might have even heard that advice before. And so, of course, what does that mean for the actual human interns and the human research assistants? And this is already something I was starting to notice speaking to hedge funds back in October of last year. Already back then, one of them that I was talking to was using generative AI to summarize the market data into a lovely kind of summary to give to the portfolio manager. And that's the work that their junior analysts do. So what does a junior analyst do? Well, they do higher level work, which is a term you used earlier, Geeta. And so I guess the question is, what is that higher level work? And also, if entry level young workers are not doing this low level grunt work, reading reports, putting together documents and presentations, how are they actually getting trained?
Exactly. I mean, and
become the senior analysts.
That is a concern, isn't it? Fortune magazine, we just saw there singling out young graduates saying that, the entry level jobs are they disappearing, and eventually won't companies realise that they still have to hire humans in order to get the people further up with the skills that they need? Do you think, Stephanie, that this argument is true? I mean, one hears it anecdotally, but is there evidence to back it up?
This is where we get into the source wars, because the Fortune article, which is quoting the New York Times op-ed arguing this, says young people are in danger. They're not going to be able to train on that low rung to get on the ladder and climb it. And then The Economist came out and was like, listen, graduate workers have been suffering at higher rates of unemployment since the financial crisis starting in 2008. This is not an AI problem. This is a different kind of problem. That said, it's also pretty low. It's about 6% worldwide. So they're doing okay. We also need to make sure that AI isn't being used to blame everything. There's a lot of reasons companies are cutting costs right now, and I can tell you for free that those in the United States will do everything they can to avoid saying it's because of tariffs or political churn coming from the US government. That is going to get them all sorts of far easier and very unattributable to just say it's AI.
But I just wonder also, Ada, whether firms are thinking, well, okay, before I hire, I don't know, 100 young new staff that I might do in this hiring round, I'll hire half and see whether the AI assists me for them to do, more work for less people. And then if I need to hire further, I will. So is there a slowdown?
Absolutely. There's a hiring freeze at the moment in that case. For example, in the recent news, Duolingo CEO mentioned about they first want to think about AI before hiring anyone on that specific role. If they achieve that role and tasks, and then they can just, they don't need to hire anyone.
And, okay, Stephanie.
But as a power user of Duolingo, I can tell you that customers push back on that, and the CEOs had to do a U-turn. So they will use AI, but they're keeping their human staff because people don't want to talk to chatbots.
Absolutely.
Like all the research shows that. They will talk to a chatbot if they absolutely have to, or for basic stuff. But like particularly for language learning, A, you don't want to pay to talk to a chatbot. You don't pay a lot. You want to get a bit more. And B, they've just had to walk it back. So a lot of companies that went hard on AI are having to walk it back because, surprise, surprise, humans like to do business with humans.
Yep.
Yeah, and Parmi, I initially started looking into this, frankly, because of my children, who are both, I should say, studying English literature, nothing to do with technology. Are certain areas within the financial world or other worlds just more vulnerable? We have discussed some, but for example, everyone assumed that if you were in coding or engineering, that you were safe, and actually we're not finding that, are we? And people are saying perhaps those with humanities skills have got something that, remarkable as these machines are, they're not going to replace human creativity.
Yeah, I think it's actually quite difficult to just pinpoint one particular industry that's vulnerable. That's why I think that actually the one cohort that is vulnerable is just those entry-level workers for multiple industries. So we were talking about finance earlier, even law firms. When you're a junior at a law firm, your job might just be to trawl through a whole bunch of old case files, case law, to try and put together, a kind of briefing. And again, that's something that AI can just do like that. And similarly, I was talking to a young accountant who's working for a fintech firm, and their job is to do due diligence on companies. And a couple of years ago, they would have been reading the Moody's reports, the company's house reports, and now they're just putting all those documents into an AI, and it's doing all that work for them, which means they're not reading all those documents and kind of getting the training from that. On the other hand, that person was telling me, if I have a question about a financial term, I'd be too embarrassed to ask my boss, but I can ask the AI. And so it's also kind of on-the-job tutor that some of these young professionals have. But I again, just to your question, I don't think there is any particular industry which is, maybe customer service and certainly writing and copy editing are the obvious ones. But this disruption is happening across multiple industries.
Yeah, critical thinking is one thing that I know some people have said they're worried about whether those skills are going to disappear or be reduced if the youngsters don't sort of start learning that immediately in human settings where they're learning from people right around them. I mean, that's one of many worries on this amongst all the opportunities. OK, let's look now at how the Economist story is running. They say the fears of AI taking all of our jobs is overblown. Ada, do you agree?
Well, I agree, actually. So going forward, I think we're going to see that the assumptions were like if you look at last year, we were talking about the complex tasks cannot be automated by AI. So we talk that there are safe harbors in the job market. For example, software development is very complex. Right now we are seeing that, for example, with the cloud's new release, so we are seeing that it's not that complex for AI. So it's improving and advancing itself. So we are thinking and seeing that, so there's no safe harbor for job market and workforce going forward.
Right, and Stephanie, I was looking at this and looking at areas like medicine and nursing. My father is a consultant radiologist. He's 91, he's still working. He must be the oldest person to be taking part in an AI trial at the moment. And he has said, from what he has seen at the moment, obviously AI can interpret some of the X-rays, basic X-rays, basic chest X-rays, but the level of accuracy is nowhere near what it needs to be right now.
Well,
so when we see predictions of radiologists being replaced, which we have seen a lot, is that correct? Is that coming? Is it just a question of time?
Well, that was the big prediction. So Jeffrey Hinton, who won the Nobel Prize only last year, he said that in 2016 that people should just stop training radiologists now. It was going to be completely obvious that within 5 years they'd be gone. So just like the prediction we've had this week. And of course, not only have radiologists stayed alive and well, not just your dad, but many of his colleagues, the American College of Radiology has projected a steadily growing workforce through to 2055. So why is that? That's because predictions that AI are going to take people's jobs often underestimates what people's jobs actually mean. To be a radiologist, as your father knows, it's about so much more than reading an X-ray or an MRI or a mammogram scan, right? They are doing really important things. They're like the doctor's doctor, so they interact with everybody. The idea that that was ever going to be replaced by a machine, in retrospect, seems silly. And indeed, Professor Hinton, because he's a wonderful researcher, has in fact modified his prediction and said he thinks going forward, medicine and radiology in particular will be hybrid, human working with AI to deliver better healthcare, win-win.
Yes, I mean, for an example, if you need 2 radiologists to check an X-ray, say in the UK, you might end up in a position where the AI is looking at one and a radiologist, a human, is looking at another. And part of that's sort of one area that many industries are looking at, aren't they? So AI supplements it, but you still keep the human in the loop.
That's what I thought was one of the most interesting parts of the interview that you cited with Dario Amodei from Anthropic, the Axios interview, where he was talking about 50% of all entry-level jobs. Further down in the interview, and this kind of flew under the radar a little bit, he said something along the lines of, people talk a lot about how AI is going to augment human work, but actually I think we're moving towards a shift where AI automates that work completely. And that's where I'm kind of not sure I agree, or if it is going to happen is a big question mark about over how long that's going to take and to what industries that's going to happen. And as you mentioned, Stephanie, with radiologists, there's this obvious human component where the radiologist needs to talk to other people on the team. And so much of that is about being on premise and meeting people in person. But there are lots of other jobs which can be done entirely remotely, which perhaps are a little bit more vulnerable to automation. Particularly now, tech companies are pushing not just AI that can generate text and prose, but also carry out tasks, these so-called agents, which can kind of do the work that maybe an entry-level employee would do. So this question about augmenting versus completely automating, I think is still really very, very hard to predict. A big question mark over that.
And Stephanie, looking much further into the future, which is obviously impossible. Yeah, but when people talk about artificial general intelligence, so this sort of holy grail that so many seem to be seeking, which is really a different hemisphere, isn't it? But you also look at what's happening in the biology field of sort of augmented humans, and so humans with super capacities. And AI is effectively talking to each other, and humans just out of the loop in terms of jobs. I mean, those are some of the predictions that a lot of people in the AI world talk about. Is that on your radar?
I mean, it's on my radar because they're so shouty about it. You know, they take up a lot of room with that. And meanwhile, you know, there are actually amazing researchers out there who are looking at bias and discrimination and when they get these things wrong and how this works with regulation and the ethics of AI that don't get anywhere near the attention they should because we have to do sci-fi time every time. And I say that as someone who loves sci-fi time. But we just want to balance it out and go,
But we're
okay.
seeing predictions that it could come, you know, within 5 years.
Yeah, and these are like predictions with no skin in the game. If they get it wrong, no one holds them to account. Elon Musk routinely makes predictions that are completely wrong, and everyone still thinks he's a genius. I don't understand it.
One report that we mentioned was from the UN International Labour Organization saying the gender gap could be made worse because of the different types of jobs that women do in high-income countries. Is that anything that you've observed? Because you work in the M&A world, the financial sector.
Yes, absolutely. So with the rise of use of AI, so basically this sharpens the gap, basically, because some parts of the society having more access to it, getting more benefits of it, but some the negative. So that increases the gap from what I see so far.
Right. And let me bring you in, Parmi, on this, on the gender gap, and also just looking a little bit into the future. I mean, it's really difficult to predict. It's very exciting. It's also quite scary.
I'm totally with Stephanie on the whole predictions thing. I mean, Elon Musk is known for over-promising and under-delivering. Demis Hassabis, the co-founder of DeepMind, I think has been saying for probably about 10 years that AGI is about 5 years away. And, you know, it's like kind of every year it's another few years away. And you know, you can understand this kind of coming from a genuine belief in this potential threshold where AI will become smarter than humans. But I think that does distract a little bit from what is actually happening on the ground today when people are using AI. Yes, which kinds of jobs are being displaced? It's young people, it's women potentially, and also about what about biased algorithms? What about AI that has not been properly vetted and may not be making fair decisions across a cohort of people?
OK, I'm going to ask all of you for a very quick bit of advice for my children and everybody else's children. What should they do to keep themselves employed? Mine haven't even started working yet, but when they do, what should they be? Don't say agile. Don't say keeping your skills up to date. What else should they do? Parmi.
Okay, I will definitely not use the word agile. Don't worry. I would use an A word, though, which is adaptive. You know, I think this comes down to just kind of like human evolution. You have to be able to adapt to change. And the best way is actually don't tell your kids that. Show them by being adaptive yourself and showing if you need to, you can experiment with these AI tools and experiment with your kids as well. And just show that you're able to handle the change. And it's hard, but you've got to kind of be an example of that rather than just tell them to do it.
It is hard. Ada, quickly.
Yes, I think as we are humans, we need to focus on our soft skills then. So this could be like leadership, teamwork, like empathy, like a creativity. So these are the things that we need to focus on.
Great answer. Stephanie, very quickly.
My career advice is be so good they can't ignore you. If that means using AI, do it. But there's plenty of other tools out there.
And be so good that you can't be ignored. And does that mean also looking at skills that we might have described as manual skills? Because the one thing that I seem to be finding is that skills, whether they're blue-collar jobs, you might have been described as, you know, plumbing, electrician, things, that is much harder to replicate. I mean, you do see robot surgery and you do see robot waiters, don't you, in Japan, for example? But just are those skills that were perhaps devalued, should they be more valued?
It's ridiculous that they were ever devalued.
Yeah.
Like any human skill is an incredible thing that we should be celebrating and developing.
Thank you all so much. That was a fantastic chat. Great to be here.